Do you think I'm running a charity here? Those were the exact words my boss threw at me when I politely asked for a raise, after 3 years of holding the company's crumbling tech infrastructure together with duct tape and sheer willpower. I didn't say anything, I just stood there blinking, wondering how someone could say something so casually cruel. Then I nodded, smiled like I'd been slapped in the face and was too polite to mention it, and walked out of his office. That's how this story starts. Not with a bang, but with a sentence that stuck to my ribs like poison. Let me back up. My name is Aurora, and for 3 years I was the lead systems architect at a mid-sized software firm based in Seattle. Not that anyone ever called me that. Officially, I was just ET Specialist Level 2, but in reality, I was the one who built the back-end database, the internal reporting tools, and the infrastructure that kept our client portals from collapsing under load. Most of our team didn't understand half of what I did. And to be honest, they never had to, because things just worked. Until they didn't. I wasn't flashy. I didn't go to happy hours. I didn't laugh at the CEO's dumb jokes in the all-hands meetings. But when systems went down at 3 a.m., I was the one people called. When a new client needed a custom analytics dashboard by Monday morning, I pulled the all-nighters. And through it all, I stayed quiet, grateful even, because I believed in putting my head down and proving myself through results, not drama. But there comes a point, even for the quiet ones, when enough is enough. I remember sitting in my car after that meeting, watching the rain slide down my windshield, replaying his voice in my head. Do you think I'm running a charity here? No, sir, I don't. But what you failed to realize is that you were running on my goodwill, on my overtime, on my blind loyalty, and you just threw it all away. For what? Pride? I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even get mad. Instead, I started thinking, because if he thought my value was zero, well, I was about to show him what it looked like when everything I built stopped working. I didn't ask for the moon, just a raise, 10% to be exact. After 3 years of holding the entire digital infrastructure together, I figured that wasn't outrageous. I compiled a list of accomplishments: platform uptime, custom dashboards for clients, emergency recoveries at 2 a.m. I kept it short, professional, respectful. I waited 3 weeks, no response. Then came the ambush. He didn't invite me into his office. He cornered me in the hallway right outside the break room, where the entire marketing team could hear. He was holding a coffee cup, that smug little grin on his face. "Hey, Aurora!" he called, loud enough for everyone to turn. "Got your email," gave me a good laugh. I blinked, unsure how to respond. He kept going. "You actually think you deserve a raise? For what? Doing your job?" A few people chuckled nervously. I felt my face flush. "I just thought," I said carefully, "given the extra responsibilities I've taken on." He cut me off. "You think I'm running a charity here? Be glad you still have a paycheck. This place isn't for people who want trophies just for showing up." Then he walked away. Just like that. No discussion, no room for dignity. The hallway was silent. I stood frozen for a second, heart pounding, before turning back toward my desk. My hands were cold, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I remembered. Because that wasn't the first time he'd brushed me off, just the loudest. Over the years, I'd been skipped for promotions, left out of meetings I architected the systems for, and expected to just make things work without ever getting credit. I opened my laptop and pulled up a private file I'd been curating for months. I called it the Blueprint. It held everything: architecture maps, security tokens, API keys, deployment scripts, encryption methods, every corner of the system I built. And none of it was documented anywhere else. They didn't care to learn how the engine worked. As long as it ran, they assumed it was magic. My magic. So that night, after everyone left, I stayed late, not to finish tasks, but to take inventory. I started quietly removing my personal backups, archived versions of code, internal notes, admin credentials I had created but never shared. Nothing malicious, nothing illegal, just mine. I wasn't sabotaging, I was reclaiming ownership. The next morning, I walked into the office like nothing happened, smiled at the receptionist, made coffee, answered Slack messages, but I was done working for them. From that point on, I was working for myself, quietly, deliberately, and they didn't even notice. 3 weeks passed. I kept my head down. I answered emails, fixed bugs, deployed patches, nothing more, nothing less. I didn't speak up in meetings. I didn't stay late. I didn't offer to help when the sales team came running with urgent client requests. I was invisible, and that was exactly how I wanted it. What they didn't see behind the silence was me slowly untangling myself from the web I'd built for them, removing permissions here, transferring dependencies there. Every system I touched, I left just functional enough to pass as stable, but without me behind the curtain, it was just a matter of time. Then came Friday. I was grabbing my second cup of coffee when my Slack pinged. "Can you swing by HR at 11? Just a quick check-in." I already knew. I walked in calmly, notebook in hand, heart steady. The HR rep looked uncomfortable, eyes darting, hands fidgeting with a pen. "Hi, Aurora," she began. "Thanks for coming. It's about your role." My manager, yes, the one with the charity line, was already seated, legs crossed like he was in a yoga class, not firing an employee. "Let's make this quick," he said flatly. "After reviewing the structure of the team, we've decided your position is no longer aligned with the direction we're heading." I tilted my head. "What direction is that?" He gave me a condescending smile. "Agile, scalable, people who fit into the team culture. You're very independent, and frankly, it's not the best match anymore." He made it sound like I was a bad pair of jeans. "Effective immediately," HR continued, "your access will be revoked and your company laptop will be collected today. We'll offer you a 2-week severance if you sign the release." No handover, no transition plan, no time to explain what only I understood. Just like that, they cut the cord. What they didn't know was I'd already pulled the plug. That laptop? I hadn't used it in weeks. I'd worked from personal backups ever since he humiliated me in the hallway. Everything sensitive had been transferred or locked down under permissions only I controlled. Their systems looked fine, for now. Because I'd left a digital structure so delicate, even sneezing at it could cause a failure cascade. But again, I wasn't planning revenge. At least, not in the way they feared. I stood up, smiled politely, and said, "Thank you for your time. I hope your new direction brings you exactly what you deserve." He raised an eyebrow. "We'll be fine, Aurora. Don't worry about us." That's when I knew he still didn't get it. He truly believed I was disposable. That a few templates and some junior devs could replace the architecture I'd spent 3 years refining. That no documentation, no redundancy, no succession planning, none of it would matter. He was wrong. I walked out of that building lighter than I'd felt in months. I didn't cry. I didn't feel bitter. What I felt was free. Over the weekend, I disconnected everything I still had access to: Dropbox, GitHub, server monitors. Just to be sure, I wiped credentials I had stored remotely, not out of spite, but because they no longer had any claim to my work. I archived every line of code I'd personally authored onto an encrypted drive. Somewhere safe, mine. On Monday, I got a message from a former coworker. It simply read, "Did you know our reporting system glitched out this morning? Finance says the data is completely off." I didn't respond. Tuesday, I got another. "Did you ever share the encryption keys for the client dashboards? They're locked and no one can get in." Still, silence. By Thursday, they were calling. Voicemails, emails, even a LinkedIn message from my old manager, as if we were long-lost friends. "Hey, Aurora, quick question. Think you could jump on a call? Just need some help untangling a few things." "Oh, now you need me?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because the systems weren't broken. Yet. But they were starting to crack, and when the real collapse came, I wasn't going to lift a single finger. Not because I was petty, but because I'd already done more than enough. They had fired me like I was nothing. Now they were about to find out what that nothing really meant. It didn't take long. 2 weeks after I left, the cracks began to show. At first it was small stuff, minor bugs in the internal dashboard, a report that pulled the wrong data set, a client's analytics page that loaded slower than usual, things that looked like random glitches to the untrained eye. But I knew better. They were symptoms, pressure points I'd predicted months ago, systems that had always relied on delicate workarounds, temporary fixes I implemented during tight deadlines because no one ever gave me the resources to build things properly. Now, without me constantly maintaining them, they were unraveling. I didn't hear anything directly, of course, but I kept tabs, quietly. A friend from HR, who still owed me a favor, forwarded a company-wide memo. We are currently experiencing intermittent performance issues across multiple client-facing tools. Our engineers are working around the clock to resolve the matter. Around the clock? You mean the same junior devs who used to ping me at 11 p.m. begging for help when a server misfired? Good luck with that. Still, the leadership team, especially my former manager, played it cool. He hosted an all-hands Zoom meeting the following Monday, looking sharp in his blazer and smug in his tone. Just a few hiccups, he assured everyone. Standard growing pains as we optimize and scale. Nothing to worry about. He even threw in a dig. And let's not forget, we're leaner now, more agile. Trimming the fat has already improved morale and budget efficiency. Trimming the fat, he was talking about me. Meanwhile, clients were getting antsy. According to a mutual contact on the sales team, several long-term accounts had flagged system instability and were asking for urgent reviews of their contracts. One client even threatened to withhold payment until their portal was fixed. But the company still didn't panic, not yet, because the systems hadn't crashed, not completely. They were bruised, not broken, just annoying enough to raise eyebrows, not enough to trigger full-blown chaos. And that's what made it worse. Because his arrogance grew with each passing day, the system stayed barely afloat. "See?" he reportedly told someone in the break room. "Told you we didn't need her. She was always overcomplicating things anyway." He didn't know that the complicated things were the reason the damn place still ran. It reminded me of watching someone walk on thin ice, laughing, unaware it's melting from underneath. I got a message from another ex-colleague that week. "Hey, weird question. Do you remember where the source logs were stored for the data sync tool? We can't find the documentation. There was no documentation. That tool existed because I spent a weekend building it from scratch after the third-party API broke during a product launch. I never documented it because no one ever asked me to." I didn't reply. Instead, I reread the message and smiled because I knew what was coming. The system wasn't going to fail with fireworks. It was going to rot from the inside, quietly. Corrupted queries, misaligned schemas, missing backup routines, death by 1,000 overlooked details. I wasn't sabotaging them. I hadn't touched a single line of code since I walked out. This wasn't revenge. This was neglect. Their neglect. Catching up to them. And it was just the beginning. Because what they didn't realize, what he didn't realize, was that he hadn't fired a cog in the machine. He'd fired the one person who understood how the entire engine worked. And without me? He was just pressing buttons, hoping something would happen. But nothing would, at least not for long. It happened on a Thursday. The day started like any other. Emails, coffee, meetings. But by noon, the client portal was offline. By 2 p.m., the internal dashboard returned only blank screens. By 4, their support inbox was flooded with complaints, data loss, corrupted files, login failures. They tried rebooting servers. Didn't help. They rolled back updates. Nothing changed. And then the real problem surfaced. No one could access the source configurations. The encrypted credentials? Gone. The backup scripts? Missing. The version control repository I'd managed for 3 years? Completely inaccessible. That's when they realized they had no control over their own infrastructure, because they never asked how it worked. They just assumed it would. I wasn't watching directly, but the updates trickled in. A friend in sales texted, 3 clients just threatened legal action. CTO is losing it. Another from finance sent a one-word message, chaos. And then came the call, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was him. "Aurora, hi. Listen, I know things didn't end well, but we really need your help. It's a total mess over here. No one can get into the systems you built. It's urgent. We'll compensate you, of course. Please call me back." He sounded winded, panicked, like a man realizing too late that the fire he started had made its way back to his own doorstep. I listened to the voicemail twice. Not out of satisfaction, out of disbelief. Just 2 months ago, this man humiliated me in public, dismissed my value, and laughed in my face for asking for a raise. Now he wanted to pay me to fix the disaster he never thought would come. The irony was almost poetic. I didn't return the call. That evening, I checked their website. It was down. Their social media accounts were flooded with complaints. One client tagged them directly. You promised us stability. Now we've lost a week of data. Who's accountable? The next day, the company issued a vague public statement. We are currently experiencing technical difficulties and are working to resolve them as quickly as possible. We apologize for the inconvenience. But it was too late. Clients were already pulling contracts. Investors were asking questions. Internally, people were quitting. And worst of all, nobody had the answers. Because I had been the answer. I hadn't hacked them. I hadn't sabotaged a thing. They fired me and forgot to ask the most important question. How do we keep this running without her? They never thought they'd need me again. But now, their entire operation was crumbling under the weight of that arrogance. By Monday morning, I had 4 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and an email titled, "Critical, please respond." I didn't. I wasn't angry anymore. I was beyond that. This wasn't revenge, this was natural consequence. You don't cut out the foundation and expect the house to stand. And still, he kept reaching out. That week, he offered me a 5-figure retainer just to consult. I didn't reply. He upped it, promised full creative control, stock options, still nothing. Finally, I received one last message. It wasn't desperate. It was hollow. I underestimated you. I see that now. I wish we'd had this conversation sooner. I almost laughed. Because we had. He just didn't listen. That was the thing. I had tried, professionally, respectfully, to be heard, to be valued, to be seen. But people like him only recognize value once it's gone. So I let the silence speak for me. They never recovered the lost data. 3 major clients left. Their biggest investor pulled funding. A month later, the company laid off 40% of its staff. He stepped down shortly after. No announcement, no fanfare. Just disappeared from the company's leadership page. As for me, I didn't gloat. I didn't post about it on social media. I didn't call old coworkers to say I told you so. I just moved on. Because unlike him, I understood the systems, not just the digital ones, the human ones. Respect, loyalty, boundaries. He broke all of them, and now he was the one locked out. His downfall wasn't loud. There was no dramatic firing, no viral expose, no boardroom blow-up, just silence. He stopped showing up at meetings. His name quietly disappeared from internal emails. The leadership page on the website updated overnight. His photo gone, his bio erased like he was never there. People whispered about it, sure. Burnout, someone said. He's stepping back to focus on his health, another guessed. But I knew the truth. He didn't step down. He fell. He bet the future of the company on the belief that I was replaceable, that my work, my systems, my expertise wasn't worth respect, let alone retention, and that bet cost him everything. By the time he realized what he'd done, it was too late. The clients were gone, the investors had backed out, the team had thinned to a skeleton crew, and no one wanted to clean up the mess he left behind. A week after his name vanished from the site, I saw him, not in person, on LinkedIn. His status changed from CEO at company to just open to work. He'd removed all details about the company, not a single bullet point, just a vague line. Experienced leader in the tech space. I clicked through the comments on his latest post, something about resilience and learning from failure. But there weren't many, because in the end, no one wants to hire the guy who let his company implode because he couldn't recognize the value of the one person holding it together. That's the part that satisfied me most. Not the collapse, not the chaos, but the fact that he finally had to sit in the mess he created and know that it didn't have to be this way. Meanwhile, I had already moved on. No press release, no social media announcement, just quiet, focused progress. I launched a consulting firm, small, selective, efficient. I didn't want to build another empire. I just wanted to work with people who respected boundaries and paid what the work was worth. The name of the firm? Not a charity, just 3 words. No explanation needed. Within 2 months, I had my first 3 clients. Companies who had heard whispers of what happened and wanted whatever Aurora built, but with documentation, redundancy, and a team that understood what value actually looked like. One of them? A former client of the company I left behind. They reached out directly. We're looking to rebuild from scratch, they said, but this time with the right person leading it. I didn't say yes right away. I made them wait. Not out of spite, but because now I chose where I invested my time. They ended up signing a retainer that was triple what I used to make in a year. Funny how that works. Funny how suddenly, when you walk away from people who undervalue you, the rest of the world starts seeing you more clearly. People say revenge is sweet, but this wasn't revenge. This was reclamation of my time, my worth, my narrative. He thought I was just another cog. Now, he's unemployed, forgotten. And me? I'm finally in control, not of their systems, but of my own life. And I didn't have to lift a finger to destroy him. He did it all by himself. 6 months later, I got an email I didn't expect. It was from a conference organizer, a big one, national scale, with sponsors from major tech firms. They were hosting a panel on resilience and systems architecture, and someone had submitted my name as a speaker. I almost declined, but curiosity won. The conference was held in San Francisco in a glass-walled hotel ballroom overlooking the bay. Rows of tech executives, engineers, and startup founders filled the seats. I was scheduled last, right after a talk titled Scaling Through Crisis. The keynote speaker? Him. I didn't realize until I saw the program that he'd rebranded himself as a turnaround strategist. The same man who ignored every warning, silenced every voice, and watched his own company burn, now giving advice on how to lead through adversity. I sat at the back during his session. He talked about lessons learned, humility, and the importance of listening to every voice on your team. Not once did he mention me. He used words like we and our failure, but his tone still dripped with self-preservation. It was a performance. One final act to salvage whatever was left of his reputation. Then it was my turn. I walked onto the stage with no slides, no flashy intro, just the story. I didn't name names, I didn't call him out, I didn't need to. I spoke about how tech systems reflect human systems, how when you neglect the people who build your foundation, you risk losing everything, not because of malice, but because of arrogance. I told them about the cracks I'd seen, the silence I endured, the turning point that made me take back ownership, not of code, but of my value. And I ended with this. Sometimes the most dangerous failure isn't in the system. It's in leadership's inability to recognize who built it in the first place. And when that happens, collapse isn't sabotage. It's just the system doing exactly what it was built to do when neglected, shut down. The room went quiet. Then came the applause. Not loud or frantic, but long, thoughtful. The kind that says, we've been there, we feel that. Afterward, a woman approached me, late 30s, sharp suit, eyes that had seen the inside of too many boardrooms. "Thank you," she said. "I was planning to quit this week, but now, maybe I'll fight a little longer. Not for them, for me." That was the moment. Not the revenge, not the downfall, that. Knowing my story helped someone feel less alone. Knowing someone who stayed silent for too long finally found their voice. That's why I told it. That's why I'll keep telling it. Because in offices across America, people are still being told they're replaceable, too quiet, not team players. And someday they'll remember. They weren't invisible. They were essential. They still are.